Hello, guys, and welcome to another episode of our civil litigation mock trial course by the Dieko Daniel School of Law. And on today's episode, we are talking about the draft of a counter affidavit, right? A draft of a counter affidavit. But specifically, we will be talking about counter affidavit in response to a motion or notice for interlocutory injunction. What we are learning here in itself is how to draft a counter affidavit, right? The rules in drafting a counter affidavit, which frankly is very similar to the rules in drafting an affidavit, right? And you know what a counter affidavit is. When somebody has drafted a motion or notice, an application to the court via a motion or notice, an affidavit and a written address, the person who is responding is known as the respondent, right? The other party to that application, the opposing party to the application, is known as the respondent, and the respondent ought to reply, because if you do not reply, it is taken that you have admitted to everything stated in the affidavit and the written address of that other person. Do you understand? So in response to that application, you are then supposed to file a counter affidavit and a written address. The person who initially filed the application can then decide, after receiving your counter and your written address, can then decide to file a further affidavit if that person wants to go against the fact that has been stated in your counter affidavit, and also reply on point of law, right, which is equivalent to the written address. But at the stage of the further affidavit, it is not called a written address, it is called a reply on point of law. So he can either file a further affidavit and a reply on point of law, or just file a reply on point of law. All these things I have discussed already in our class on interlocutory applications, injunction, and interpleader proceedings. We have discussed each and every one of these things, and this form the basis of our module 8 for our civil litigation mock trial course. If you have not gone through the videos, the lecture videos of that course, there's no point trying to learn how to draft a counter affidavit, because you would not understand how it's work. Do you understand? So with that, we are learning how to draft a counter affidavit, but particularly we are learning how to draft a counter affidavit in response to a motion or notice for interlocutory application. So like every other court process, we are supposed to start with the heading of the court. And I've taught you in different drafting classes that when you are starting in the heading of the court, we are looking at in the High Court of Lagos State, in the Lagos Judicial Division, holding at Lagos, right? There is no in the High Court of Oyo State, in the something else Judicial Division. If it's going to be in the High Court of Oyo State, there is going to be in the Ibadan Judicial Division holding at Ibadan, or in the Oyo Judicial Division holding at Oyo. Any of them will suffice. In the Lagos Judicial Division holding at Lagos. Do you understand? There is no Ekpe Judicial Division. There is no Ikorodu Judicial Division. There is no Surulere Judicial Division. If it's in Abuja, in the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, in the Abuja Judicial Division holding at Abuja. Now, if you do not understand how jurisdiction work and in what court you are supposed to take certain matters to, then I will tell you that you need to go and read up on jurisdiction, or watch the lecture videos on jurisdiction, which forms the basis of our module 2 for our civil litigation class, so that you will know what matters go to what court and what not. The next thing that is supposed to be in your process should be your suit number. Your suit number. I've told you countless times that as insignificant as that suit number is, it forms the basis of about half mark in the total marking scheme, right? Then after your suit number, you're supposed to have the parties, and this forms the basis of what? Of our class 3, which is parties to a civil action. If you want to learn how to draft the parties section very well, you need to watch the module 3 of our civil litigation course, where we discuss in details how you bring an action. In one capacity, you bring an action. If it's a representative action, a business name, an unregistered association, a company, whatnot, then you know how to properly draft it. We've talked about it, but one significant thing is that when you are drafting an application, a motion on notice or a motion ex parte, not only are you supposed to put the designation of claimants and defendants, you are supposed to put the designation of applicant and respondent, because the court needs to know which one of you, is it the claimant that is bringing this application, or is it the defendant that is bringing the application? So it ought to be claimant slash applicant if the claimant is the one bringing the application, or defendant slash applicant if it is the defendant bringing the application. And therefore, in the first case, the defendant will then be the respondent, while in the second case, the claimant will be the respondent. Do you understand? When we were drafting our motion on notice, right, you would see that when drafting your motion on notice, it is almost the same thing that you have, right, when we're drafting our interlocutory application and all that. It's almost the same thing. So if you are going to draft an affidavit, all you just have to do is copy and paste. Do you understand? Copy the heading of the court, copy the suit number, copy the parties, paste it. If it's a counter affidavit, you are also responding. You still have to copy and paste. Then you will now write counter affidavit. Now you see that when we're drafting our affidavit, we drafted our affidavit as affidavits in support of motion or notice for interlocutory injunction. Affidavits in support of motion or notice for interim injunction. But when you are drafting your counter affidavit, there is no counter affidavit going against the motion. No, you just draft counter affidavits. So all counter affidavits is just counter affidavits. Do you understand? There is no counter affidavit going against the motion on notice for no. But when you are drafting your affidavit in support of your motion, you must write it affidavit in support of the motion on notice for interlocutory application or interlocutory injunction. Do you understand that? So we've talked about the heading of the court, we've talked about the suit number, we've talked about the parties and their designation, we've talked about how you write your counter affidavit. It is just counter affidavit. Now, the first paragraph of an affidavit, I've already taught this in previous set of classes. When you are drafting an affidavit, the first thing is ngaoka. I told you that already. I've taught you that. Ngaoka. What is that? Your name, your gender, adult, that's the A, name, N, gender, G, A, adult, O, occupation, C, citizen, A, address. In that order. It might not sound very pleasant to be saying Ngaoka, but for the sake of exam and for the sake of knowledge, when you are drafting, Ngaoka, simple and short. Name, gender, adult, occupation, citizen, address. I also taught you that when you are drafting, there are some other people that will put R, which is religion. The religion usually comes after the adults. So it is something like name, gender, adult, Christian, lawyer. Do you understand? That's occupation, Nigerian citizen of so and so. You can also put it after the occupation. It can be anywhere but before the address. Basically, it can be anywhere, right? Because you are just trying to tell us who this person is. So, but I said that it's not necessary you put it, but if you remember it for the purpose of your exam, that's fine. If you remember it during drafting, that's fine. Like you see me, I can remember it. That, oh, when I'm drafting, which one is it a Muslim or a Christian? I just add Christian. Simple. Doesn't take anything away, doesn't take any mark away from you. Do you understand what I'm saying? But the general one is Ngaoka. You can add your religion however it is. So in this case, we have I. And don't forget that it starts with I, because an affidavit is somebody that is deposing to it, right? So I, Haruna Ibrahim, N, male, which is what? G, A for adult. Then we'll talk about businessman, occupation, Nigerian citizen, C of number 17, Akiume Close Ikeja. Then that's the address. Then immediately after your Ngaoka, don't forget this line. Do hereby make oath and state as follows. Do hereby make oath and what? And state as follows. Now, number one is where you are supposed to introduce yourself. I am the defendant respondent in this suit, by virtue of which I am conversant with the fact of this case. I have told you the last time when we drafted an affidavit, we put this thing in two different places. Number one, We said paragraph 1 that I am the defendant in this suit. Simple. Then we now went to paragraph 2. By virtue of paragraph 1 above, I am conversant with the fact of this case. That's how we put it in our last drafting class. And I told you in the last drafting class that the court wants to see is that the two of them, right, those two things are present in the first or second paragraph of your affidavit. So you can say I am the defendant respondent, and by virtue of that, I'm conversant with the fact of this case, and that can form the basis of your paragraph 1 alone. Or you can split it. I am the defendant respondent in paragraph 1, and then go to your paragraph 2 and say by virtue of that, I am conversant with the fact of this case. Now, either way, right, so far the information is either your paragraph 1 and paragraph 2 or solely your paragraph 1, it works. Do you understand that? Now when you are drafting your counter affidavit, a paragraph should state, which ordinarily should be the next paragraph after the 2 paragraphs or 1 paragraph that I told you earlier. A paragraph should state that you have gone through the affidavit in support of the application for injunction of the claimant applicants. Now, when you are in this case now, you know that this case is that of an interlocutory injunction. Whatever application it is that you are receiving, right? You will say, oh, my lord, I have gone through the, do you understand? I have gone through the affidavit in support of the application for whatsoever by the claimant. It has to be stated in your counter affidavit. I have gone through that application. I have looked at the paragraph of the affidavit. I have gone through the application. Then you now go to your next paragraph. I know paragraph 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 of the affidavit in support to be false. So there are basically 3 paragraphs that must introduce your counter affidavit, which distinguishes your counter affidavit from any other kind of affidavit. Do you understand? The first one is that you tell us who you are, and you must add that by virtue of who you are conversant with the fact. The second one is that you tell us that you have gone through the application of the other party. That is, you have gone through the application and you have seen the affidavit and you have read through the affidavit. This is not how you are going to put it, but this is the information that you are passing across. That, my lord, I am conversant with the fact in this case, paragraph 1. I am the defendant and I'm conversant with the fact in this case. Then paragraph 2, my lord, I have read through the affidavit in support of the motion for so and so by the claimant applicant. And number 3, I know, not that they tell me, say, I know that paragraph so and so of their affidavit is not true or are not true. Do you understand? Those are the first 3 paragraphs of a counter affidavit. Why? That's why it is called counter. That is why it is that in your affidavit, you are going against the fact stated in their own affidavit. Either you are going against their facts, right, by saying it is not true, or you are now telling us your own new set of facts. Do you understand? After you've told us that their facts, they are not true, then you now tell us the new version of that fact that goes against them. And if there are any other facts that they left in their affidavit in support of the application, you can then add those facts that were left out in your own counter affidavit. Now, if you had gone through my class on interlocutory applications now, you would know that when I was teaching you interim injunction and interlocutory injunction, klibos, I taught you how to draft certain paragraphs of the klibos, right? Conduct of the parties, legal interest must be shown to exist, and all those kind of things. Irreparable damage. There was a particular fact that I used in the affidavit of that class, right? That class, I taught you an affidavit. I taught you certain paragraphs, right? Those paragraphs should be in line with the conditions as stated in Obeya Memorial, our Klibos conditions. Now, this is a counter affidavit against those paragraphs. So if you can remember those paragraphs very well, that will be fine. Now, the deponent in this case now has said that I know that on the 12th, right, of June 2023, I purchased a piece of land situated at number 5 Isaac John Street, Ikeja, from Alhaji Jide Abdulkarim. Now, Alhaji Jide Abdulkarim, which is paragraph 5, purchased the land from the Ogbonge family, who are the customary owners of about 50 acres of land, which they inherited from their ancestors who first settled on the land, out of which he bought 400 by 250 square meters. Now, when I was teaching you how to draft a motion, don't forget that I told you that you are supposed to have a piece of information, right? Just one piece of information per paragraph. One paragraph should contain one piece of information. So in this case now, if you look at paragraph 4, it says that I know that on the 12th of June 2023, I purchased the land situated as so from so person. So that paragraph is telling us that there was a purchase, right? And then he now said in paragraph 5 that I know that this person had this land from who? The Ogbonge families who were the customary owners. That's another what? Another paragraph. Now, containing one information. Now we are now going to paragraph 6. Now paragraph 6 says that the sale agreement with Alhaji Jide Abdulkarim was signed, and this sale agreement is attached and marked exhibit H1. You can use any number and alphabet as you choose, right? But personally, I feel like I would have put this paragraph 6 in paragraph 4. Since you said I purchased a land from so and so person, you should have just attached the sale agreement to that land and mark it as exhibits. Do you understand? So that it doesn't make your affidavit too voluminous, but at least you get the point that we are making here. Now, if you read through this whole affidavit, I don't want to go through the whole of it in this class because it will make our class again too voluminous. But if you read through this affidavit, you are going to see that for every paragraph there is one information that is given, which is the rule of affidavit. After we've talked about the introductory part of an affidavit, we then go to each of the paragraphs in that affidavit. What are those paragraphs doing? Because it's a counter affidavit, you are supposed to go against the depositions, the facts in the main affidavit that you are responding to. That is number 1. Number 2, you are supposed to add your own new additional information. Do you understand that? And for every paragraph, it should contain just one information. And if there are evidence to that effect, you should now say that evidence. So, for example, the sale agreement, which is the evidence of the fact that there was a sale, is hereby attached and marked exhibit so and so. So if you continue now, for example, you will see that in paragraph 9, on account of the failed transaction, the contract was cancelled and the amount of 100,000 paid by the claimant applicant as deposit was paid back to the claimant applicant. The receipt issued by the claimant applicant secretary is hereby attached and marked exhibit so and so. You see what I'm saying? So you follow in an affidavit, you are telling a story. You are telling a story from the beginning of time to the place that the wahala occurred, right? And what happened. So you are going day by day, step by step, telling each story per paragraph. On this day, this happened. On this day, this happened. And when this happened on this day, we had an agreement, and this agreement is attached and marked exhibit so and so. And you follow your story to a logical conclusion until you get to the last paragraph. Do you understand that? Now, you should write in 2 paragraphs. That is towards the end of your affidavit, that it will be in the interest of justice to refuse the application as work on the building has been completed. Now, when you are writing your counter affidavit, you should always state that it will be in the interest of justice to refuse the application, or it will be against the interest of justice to grant the application. Let the court know that should be one of the most standard paragraphs of your counter affidavit. Either it is against the interest of justice to grant the application, or it will be in the interest of justice to refuse the application and give a reason why it will be in the interest of justice or be against the interest of justice. Give a reason. So in this case now, their reason is that work has already been completed on the land. Do you understand? So it is going to be against the interest of justice. Do you understand? And the last paragraph, like I've taught you in every affidavit, I make this solemn declaration conscientiously, believing same to be true and by virtue of the provisions of the Oath Act. Every affidavit, that must be your last paragraph. I make this solemn declaration conscientiously, believing same to be what? To be true and by virtue of the provisions of the Oath Act. And then when you are done, what next? The space for the deponent to sign. Then after that, sworn to at the High Court registry at the left hand side. The place where the deponent side is at the right hand side. Then sworn to at the High Court registry in the left hand side, and dated this dash day of dash 20 dash, and before me, Commissioner of Oath. And that's all. We are done with the whole of the counter affidavit. So some key things that distinguishes a counter affidavit from the normal affidavit in support of an application. Number one, the heading just says what? Counter affidavit, right? Number two, the first three paragraphs. After you have introduced yourself and you let us know that by virtue of your position, you are conversant with the facts, you must tell us that you have gone through the paragraphs of the affidavit in support, and tell us the next thing, which is that you know certain paragraphs to be false. Then you start telling us your story. Then your last two paragraphs should now be that it is either going to be against the interest of justice to grant, or it will be for the interest of justice to refuse. And then you tell us the last paragraph, you make this solemn declaration conscientiously, believing same to be true and by virtue of the provisions of the Oath Act. Also, you are narrating a story for us from the beginning to the end, and make sure one paragraph contains one story. If there is any evidence to that paragraph or the facts stated in that paragraph, you should attach it and mark it as exhibit so and so. Simple. You sign as deponent, sworn to at the High Court Registry, Lagos, and dated this day before me, Commissioner of Oaths, and we are done. Do you understand that? I hope that you have enjoyed our class so far. In our next class, we'll be talking about our order drafting classes. I will see you in our next class. Have a very wonderful day.